Okay, for today we're going to be taking notes on different ink techniques. These don't have to be used with ink only, but they are going to be useful for when we do that assignment. So please put the day and the title up there, and then there's 5 different techniques we want to go over today. The first one is what we call hatching, and hatching are parallel lines, and you'll see how we use that to create value together. So hatching, again, uses parallel lines. They can be short, they can be kind of longer. There is a special technique that we can use that's called like contour hatching. So if you remember anything about contour lines, there's contour hatching, which goes along the contours of something. So let's say I had something like a ball, you can do hatching, which has these kind of parallel lines, or you can do contour hatching, which would go kind of along the contours or around the edges of that ball. So there's also something called contour hatching right under that. Next, we have what's called cross hatching. So very similar to that. Instead of using parallel lines, these use intersecting lines. So just like with cross contour lines, if you cross contour or cross hatch, the lines intersect each other, they cross into each other. So again, a technique like that would have these lines that cross into each other. And in all directions, so they don't have to be just going perpendicular to each other. All right. Next, we get into my favorite technique, which is called stippling. And stippling is also known as the dotting technique. So that's using a bunch of dots to shade things. This one takes the longest. I think it looks the best. Some people call this pointillism for some reason. That's a completely different thing technically, so I would prefer you to call it stippling. Next, we have what's called scumbling or scribbling. When I don't like to use the word scribbling too much because then it gets kind of wild. So this is very purposeful scribbling. So purposely scribbled lines. There you go. Again, you can use that to shade. Your last one that I'd like you to just recognize, there's all sorts of patterns that you can use. You can literally use anything and just layer it. And that's like a free choice technique, let's say that. And so you just repeat a shape or a pattern like the ones that you see below here. Again, you can use these, I know it says ink techniques, but you can use these in whatever medium that you want to. But we do want to talk about how to make things look lighter and darker when you can't have an eraser to help you with what you're using. So for us, we're going to be using our Sharpie markers, or if you have a fancier pen, then we can also use them. We do want to take notes, as I said, like at the bottom there, we're going to take notes on how we can generally make things look lighter or darker when we use the pen. So first of all, when we want to make things lighter versus when we want to make things darker, lighter ink techniques tend to have you draw a little bit larger, or you can have them more spaced out from each other. And then usually those lines are going to be a little thinner. So if you can control how thin or thick your lines are, then they're thicker. The opposite is true when we're dealing with the darker ones. So with that one, instead of more spaced out, you want to make them like very small, and you want them to be very dense. And then lastly, they're going to be thicker. So if you can go over your lines a little bit more to thicken them up, then that will help give the appearance that it's darker there. And that's it for notes on ink techniques.